Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. As the Lakers get ready for their preseason opener, JJ Redick talks rotations. Where does Jarred Vanderbilt fit into all of this? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how, where you get your podcasts. This one's always going to be free, never behind paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 36,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy, all of whom are getting ready for a preseason basketball game coming at the end of the week. The Lakers getting ready in their first week of the preseason. Plenty of stuff from injuries and beyond to talk about over the course of today, Andy. And then along with that, I should say, the idea of who might be in the rotation as that starts to shape up, who's in, who might be on the outside looking in, and all that good stuff. It is not tons of surprises early, I would say. But a lot of it, Andy, will depend on who's healthy. And to that degree, we did get a little more movement, and it's positive movement, more guys on the floor.
Well, sort of. It is more positive movement in the sense that Gabe Vincent was a full participant in practice on Wednesday, and LeBron was doing some individual on-court work. To the best of my knowledge, Brian and I were not able to make it to practice on Wednesday, but to the best of my knowledge, it was not terribly specific what the on-court work was, but it is undoubtedly part of a ramp up that will be slower and methodical. We know that LeBron is not going to play Friday against Phoenix, but Gabe Vincent being back in full is obviously a good step forward for the Lakers. Unfortunately, though, Maxi Kleber tweaked a quad on Tuesday and is slated to get an MRI just to take a look at the extent of whatever damage. JJ Redick expressed some hopefulness that it will not be anything serious and that would sideline Kleber for a while. How much Kleber was slated to play this season, I think, is very much an open-ended question, but at the same time, he did manage to leapfrog Jackson Hayes in Game 5, an elimination moment in the playoffs. So there is something JJ at minimum likes about Kleber, or at worst liked more in that moment than Jackson Hayes.
I think what he liked in that moment was specifically that Maxey wasn't Jackson Hayes. I think that was most of what it was. JJ wanted to put somebody big on the floor. Flat did not trust Jackson to give him any kind of decent minutes, and was, I think, fairly to say, grasping at straws in that situation. The hope is that injury is not particularly serious. The Lakers, obviously 3 days into training camp, are being extremely cautious with everyone. And LeBron, while limited individual drills, had already been ruled out of Friday's preseason opener. He is also, he was in street clothes on Tuesday. So, moving from street clothes to individual workouts indicates, being on the floor is better than not being on the floor. They're just going to be real slow with him. They have still another 3 weeks before the regular season opener on the 21st. I think for me, if he's not practicing by, I don't know, legitimately practicing by, the 15th, 14th, something like that, a week before that game, that's when I start to get really concerned. Or obviously if they say something to that before then. I mean, up until then, I'm not going to be too worried about LeBron, and see him being on the floor as progress.
With Kleber, real quick, you may very well be right that JJ just liked the idea that Maxey, as you said, wasn't Jackson and could offer something different in a large person-size package. But it is worth remembering JJ was teammates with Kleber in Dallas.
Sure, no, I'm not saying he doesn't.
All I'm saying is that it is not impossible that JJ had visions of Kleber contributing something or bringing something to the table beyond just size, especially because he played Kleber in crunch time, like the last 5 minutes of that elimination game 5.
Right.
Which
All
I
I'm saying is
maintain
I'm not
galaxy brain.
Sure.
But still.
All I'm saying is I'm not reading that moment into where I think it's pretty clear the Lakers and, JJ knows Kleber, Luka knows Kleber. Like, there is some familiarity. The guy's been around for a while now. He's got a skill set that is different than Jackson. Like, I think the backup center role, you will see more of Jack. I think you'll rarely see all three of them play in the same game. But I think you will have moments where Kleber is the better matchup as a backup center than Jackson. He is a better ball mover. He has a little bit more, the 3-point percentage has been a little wonky over the last, couple of seasons, but he certainly is a more competent 3-point shooter if you wanted somebody to stretch the floor than Jackson is. I'm not saying that JJ doesn't have faith in Kleber as a potential useful player. I'm just saying I'm not using what happened in game 5 as any sort of barometer of what is to come this year. So it was, on that sense, the Lakers are kind of moving along, getting ready to go. I think you'll see the starters and stuff play, some very limited minutes early on in camp. They've got 6 preseason games, which is a lot. And so moving on from there, the question is, as training camp starts to shake out, who's going to be in the rotation? Who are the guys who are early season favorites before we even get to the starting lineup stuff? Just like, who are the 9 guys, the 10 guys that you would expect to see in the rotation? And to that end, JJ talked a little bit about that on Wednesday.
He mentioned or was asked about the guard rotation, and per Jovan Buha's block, he mentioned when talking about the guards, Luka, Austin, Gabe Vincent. Hold on 1 second, real quick. Let me find it in front of me. Oh, here we go. Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart, Gabe Vincent, and Jake LaRavia as rotation locks. And what I found interesting about that is JJ grouping LaRavia with the guards, because while particularly defensively on some level, Jake has done a little bit in terms of checking twos. He has spent some time in floor lineups, if you go to like cleaning the glass and other places, where he is technically playing a guard spot. I think he is much more thought of as a forward around the league. I mean, I think you could argue he is closer to a 4 than he is a 2. But I found it interesting that he included LaRavia with the guards, just in the sense that it might be in some ways indicative of how JJ is envisioning some of the positions being allotted, some of the rotational spots. Obviously, with LeBron and Luka, there is a lot of flexibility in the way you can both use them and what you can regard them as. Luka may be listed as the starting small forward on this team. He is also, for all intents and purposes, their starting point guard.
Yeah, I mean, and he has historically been listed as a starting point guard, but either way, he functions as one.
But what
what
I found interesting about it, though, is the idea that if he is thinking of LaRavia, at least theoretically, slotted in guard minutes, that could be indicative of what he is, say, not envisioning, at least for the time being, for Dalton Knecht in the rotation, because it's certainly going to be hard to play more than 5 guards in your rotation, or guys that you are thinking about with guard minutes, but also, too, who he's thinking about with forwards. And based on the way he was talking today about Jarred Vanderbilt, it sounds more and more like he is slotting some of that forward minutes allotment for Vando.
Yeah, I think a couple things in there. The first one is I completely agree with you. I think that I wouldn't get too hung up on, oh, wait, Jake LaRavia is a guard now. He's playing the 2. No, he's a 3. Like he's going to play sort of those swingy 3, minutes. He's less of a 3-4 than he is a 2-3. So I think he gets thrown in the bucket with the,
I don't know about that, but keep
but
going.
You can consider him with some of the skills that he has as sort of a 2 guard. You can consider him a small forward, which is I think what most people look at him as. If you're going really small, you can play him at the 4. But like, I wouldn't get my point is I wouldn't get super hung up in the categorization of the position, because as you note, when essentially your 2 point guards are 6'8", 6'6" and 6'8", then you have a lot more flexibility. So what that means for Dalton Knecht, and what I think I agree with you, it means for Vanderbilt, we'll get to next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Peloton, shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ, their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. Training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that can help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. The Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, corrects your forms, making every rep safer and smarter. The personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored for your vibe and for your energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com.
So like with Laravia, you think, the point you're getting at, the point I'm certainly getting at is like, you can envision, because you have ball handlers that are very large people, you can envision lineups if the Lakers are going big where Laravia, let's say if Marcus Smart's on the floor, for example, could technically be playing kind of a 2 or a 2-3 or something like that. If they're going smaller at 6'7", 6'8", Laravia can function as a 3-4 kind of guy. Like they have a lot of flexibility. If LeBron on a given night, they're going really small and you're playing your backup center, that kind of thing. And so I think to see the big point of that, as you noted, is that he didn't talk about Dalton, that Dalton looks
at least not as a rotation lock. It doesn't mean Dalton may not be able to crack
but when you mentioned 5 guards, and stuff like that, and there are still players on the roster that are going to be in the rotation that were not mentioned, you're running out of space real quick. And I think, functionally, what it means is that as they start the season, Dalton Knecht is not a regular member of that, initial 9, certainly not group of 9. And it doesn't seem like he's got the inside track to be the 10th guy on nights where they go 10. And that is notable, that this guy who was, where they looked like the trajectory was so strong going into last season, and then, throughout the early part of the season and all that kind of stuff, comes into his second year, albeit on a better roster, with no obvious path to early rotation minutes. And what did you think of what the sort of explanation that was given for Dalton's summer league? If you heard it, people missed it. It actually was brought up last week, but again this week, the idea that Knecht had just trained way too hard at the end of the season and was essentially burnt out physically by the time summer league rolled around. That's what management talked about. Dalton kind of reiterated that himself. What did you make of that?
I think it's possible. I mean, whatever you like or dislike about Dalton, one of the consistencies that you hear about him, and I've heard from multiple people, is that he really does spend a lot of time in the gym.
Hooper.
He is constantly out there working. And however much you think that work is translating into success and development and improvement, notwithstanding, still a lot of work. And I could picture, given the way the second half of his season post rescinded trade played out, I could picture a scenario where Dalton really went hardcore, wanting to make the best possible impression for the summer league, and ironically, potentially making it worse because he was burnt out. To some degree, I guess I don't even care because I just want to see him play well in preseason. Like, Dalton's rookie season was both really unusual in terms of the different circumstances. Like, he went from being this super hot commodity in the first couple months where there was talk about him potentially as like a dark horse rookie of the year. There was a few weeks of how could JJ Redick even possibly consider taking Dalton Knecht out of the starting lineup. He had a couple 30-point games. Then he ends up in part of that rescinded deal that, as much as they traded him for a complete opposite player. It's not like they traded him for a souped up, more seasoned Dalton Knecht. They traded him because they needed a starting caliber center. And from there, his minutes dwindling as they got closer to the playoffs. In all honesty, that's not unusual for rookies at all, unless you're talking about really, really high-end rookies who have just been rotation mainstays for the entire year and are like, top 5, top 6 players on your team. It's not unusual at all for rookies on, 3 seed caliber teams to start playing less and less. Like, I've talked on a bunch of shows, particularly while the Lakers were playing the Wolves in that first round series, liking what we've seen from Terrence Shannon and those moments he got extended minutes against the Lakers. I thought he looked really good. Terrence Shannon also spent a lot of time in and out of the Timberwolves rotation.
Sure.
So there was a lot of things both totally predictable with Dalton's rookie season and quite literally you can't find a comparison point. So a lot to wrap his head around. I just want to see him play well.
The other part of this is Jarred Vanderbilt and, how he kind of fits into the rotation. I mentioned yesterday, I don't think there's a player who is more influential in terms of the Lakers' ceiling than DeAndre Ayton. I saw something on Twitter today over the course of the afternoon, which team has the best big four, like the best top four, I should say. And, the fourth guy in the photo for the Lakers after Luka, LeBron, and Reeves was Ayton. And that's exactly who I would put in there as the fourth guy. I think he's the fourth most talented player on that team. And so when I think he's going to have an enormous influence on what the top end is for the Lakers. I think the second guy, though, that has the most sort of X factor capacity is Jarred Vanderbilt, because he has not really been somebody capable of making a consistent contribution over the last couple seasons. And while there's always the temptation with Vando to sort of assign him skill sets that he doesn't always demonstrate, the skill sets that we know about are, it's stuff the Lakers could use with this roster.
I think he's their best overall defender on this team when healthy. Just like when you factor in all the different parts of defense, guarding with versatility, on-ball defense, a disruption factor, the ability to navigate screens, physicality, the energy, the edge, rebounding, which is a part of defense. Like, there may be guys on this team who do certain things better than Vanderbilt of all the lists that I just read off, but I don't think there's anybody on this team who does more of those things as well as Vando. And there's certain things that, again, he's flat out the best at. And when he is at the top of his game, we even saw this in a handful of games last year when Vando was still recovering from that double foot surgery and never quite really became the fully realized version of himself. There were quarters or halves of games where Vanderbilt completely effed up the opposition and completely changed the tone and tenor of games through just this very singular quality that he offers. Like, Marcus Smart is, I think, the closest thing that the Lakers have to Jarred Vanderbilt. but he's not exactly the same type
No,
of player.
he's a more physical defender. It's that he's not. It's not. He's a strength defender. Vando is more of an athletic defender and a bouncy guy who can
He's
get
faster.
off the floor. He's quicker and that kind of thing. And so, I think Smart has fairly impeccable defensive instincts, which matter hugely in terms of really being a dominant defensive player. But with Vanderbilt, it's a different way of presenting that defense. And certainly as a front court player, he offers something that isn't offered with the other guys. And
he's a front court player that is, I think, even counting Marcus Smart, if he's healthy, he is their best defender defending 1s, 2s, and 3s. Even more so, I think.
Maybe. In certain situations, I think depends on what kind of scheme you're running or whatever. But
if you're looking at guys who are with quickness and those type of guards, right, those type of wings, I think Vando at this stage of Marcus Smart's career, Vando is better at that.
It depends. I think there are certain, you can certainly make the argument, and the point though is like it offers a certain level of versatility. It offers a certain way. It offers JJ Redick the opportunity to play defenses with different schemes because you're not constantly forced to switch, or if you want to have something switch, like you can do a lot of different stuff when you have capable defenders like Smart and Vanderbilt available to you. But it's all predicated on health. And Vanderbilt at Media Day talked, basically it didn't matter, what you asked him. The answer was going to be tied back to being healthy. He feels good. His body feels good. He's ready to go, all that other stuff. And, you could tell the sort of frustration of the last couple seasons coming through there, lifting with being as healthy as he was. But then, Wednesday, JJ Redick kind of echoed that from a coaching standpoint in that, Vando looks just way different. The health aspect of it, he looks like the guy that Lakers acquired before all the injuries really started to pile up. So when we get back, we can talk about kind of what that means, and where Vando potentially fits in from a minute standpoint, player combinations, and all that. We'll do that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season in full swing, and FanDuel's making sure you are ready for every kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app, so pick something super obvious. I love that FanDuel fits however you want to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. If you're somebody who just kind of has that feel for how a fourth quarter is going to unfold, you can get ahead of those results with a little wager. It makes every game just a little more exciting, whether you're watching the team that you root for IRL or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
So much of what the Lakers are going to do at the beginning of the season, whether you're talking about, the starting lineup or how the rotation looks, is how long it takes for Marcus Smart to get back on the floor. He is also not practicing yet. If you have to put them side by side, which injury is probably more concerning, what they're dealing with LeBron or what they're dealing with Smart? To me, I think it's no question. It's Marcus Smart. It's a left Achilles tendinopathy, so essentially tendonitis in that Achilles tendon, and that's not an area to mess with, but B, more importantly, Smart himself is coming off of 2 very injury laden seasons, and so you obviously have to be super careful with him, but you also want to get him back on the floor. Particularly if there's any inclination that you think you might want to start him at the beginning of the season. He's got to be in, he's not doing that if he misses the first week and a half or 2 weeks of training camp.
Yeah, it's really interesting and I guess potentially unfortunate, depending on how long this goes on for Smart. But we had talked a lot about that 5th starting spot, which seemed, I think, to a lot of people handicapping this. And JJ has said he has not made up his mind with the starting lineup, although 4 of the slots, I think by common sense, are set in stone. It really had felt like the fifth spot was a battle between Marcus Smart and Rui Hachimura. If ultimately this gets solved by health as opposed to training camp performance, that would suck. I mean, look, Rui's been on the other side of it. For all the crap that Darvin Ham took at the beginning of the 23-24 season when he started Taurean Prince out of training camp ahead of Rui, that was really Rui not having a particularly good training camp, in part because he had been hurt. And, Darvin's hands were tied a little bit. I mean, all jokes about how much he clearly loves Taurean notwithstanding, Rui did not have a good training camp, and Taurean actually had a really strong training camp. So sometimes these things work themselves out in ways that aren't particularly pleasant or preferable, but that's just how it shakes out.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if Smart, if the Lakers have to be at all cautious with Smart as they open the season, the first few weeks of the season, he's not going to start. I mean, it answers the question before you really have to answer any others. There are no other, what about this lineup, that combination, playing to strengths? It is all a completely moot point if Smart isn't, if they're worried about Smart being able to get through the season healthy. So, but anyway, and that all of this is, Smart's availability and workload is going to be directly related, I think, to what Vanderbilt does. And so, this idea of Vanderbilt looking like the guy the Lakers wanted to be, particularly defensively, particularly with the amount of activity, and on the other end, cutting, moving, creating havoc, is a regular season player, a guy who can, get you an offensive rebound and just outwork players. Hustle is a very important skill set, particularly in the regular season, hustle and energy. Vando can be really effective in that way, even if we don't buy into, and they were circulating on Wednesday, the look at Vando's improved jump shot videos that are yearly at this point. I hope it's true, but I'm not counting on any of it. But he, as much as any player probably in the NBA, needs to be as close to healthy as possible to be the fullest version of himself.
Yeah, both he and Marcus Smart, I'm talking earlier about the similarities between them and the differences. One thing they have in common is they both can be real tone-setting players. It just in the way that they play and the physicality and the relentlessness of it. And some words from JJ were very optimistic in terms of what he's seen so far from Vando, but also, I think this is important, what he's envisioning for Vando, because last year, whether because Vando missed so much time or even when he got back on the court, not being all the way there, prevented JJ from building up as much trust in him as Vando would have preferred. For what it's worth, what I would have preferred. I thought he should have played Vando more, and I was pretty open about that. But JJ talking about Vando during Wednesday's practice, quote, and specifically talking about the type of on-ball pressure that he wants to be applying more regularly defensively as part of their schemes, quote, I think with a healthy Vando and hopefully a healthy Marcus, I think our ability to put more pressure on the basketball earlier in the defensive possession will be a real thing. It's night and day the way Vando's moving right now. Even from when we finished the season, his growth and body mechanics this summer, it's evident the first 2 days of camp. He went on later to say, it looks like we do have the pre-injury version of Vando. I've talked a lot with him this summer just about how he got put into a tough spot post-trade, referencing the Luka trade, because he had to play the five. There wasn't other options. Just play small, had to be the backup five. They were our two options. So just getting him back on the perimeter defensively, his body being in a good place from athleticism and agility standpoint will be super helpful for our team. And that, by the way, references a big issue I know I had a lot. I heard fans have. I think, Ryan, you did at times as well. The way Vando was utilized defensively, it often didn't feel like he was on the perimeter enough with his defensive assignments. I think sometimes the super excessive switchiness that JJ employed often allowed Vando to be taken off the ideal assignments for him, just because the Lakers were so frequently and often willingly switching. But I would love to see Vando just utilized more like this. Again, that very unique skill set he has for this team that it really needs.
Well, there are certain matchups where you want to stick him one-on-one and someone he can is good for that kind of lockup thing. There are certain matchups where it doesn't work as well, where you run him, he's running off lots of screens or this, that, whatever. But the center aspect of this is just super important, because a lot of what I think from the coaching standpoint, whether you agree or disagree, I think they did a lot of what they did because they felt like they just didn't have a lot of other choices.
We'll see. I'm not sure I agree with that, but this coming season will confirm.
We'll find out, right? Because you didn't have, when you have LeBron James or you have Jarred Vanderbilt as your centers, or like guys like that, where you are playing essentially without rim protection, when you're playing with essentially without, lockdown guys in the perimeter, like you don't have a lot of stuff. So you try to pick, like, what is our path to the most cohesive defense that we can put together. And there were times when the Lakers did quite well at this and required an enormous amount of energy, but but now let's assume 5 weeks into the season, 6 weeks into the season, that Vanderbilt is healthy, Smart is healthy, Ayton is rebounding the ball well and at least providing an improved amount of rim protection over what they had in the second post trade last year. You don't need as much of that necessarily. You don't have to necessarily rely on one thing. And you also are taking Vanderbilt, who does need to be deployed properly. I don't think he is a universally perfect defender. Kind of just put him out there and he'll, he can do whatever you want him to do. You do need to sort of use him in ways that maximize his skill set. But that starts first and foremost, but at the very least, letting him play forward instead of having him be your center. And so they are just so much better equipped to use players like Vanderbilt effectively this year than last, based on the surrounding roster. And then if Vanderbilt remains the healthy version of himself, he allows them to use him because he's both available, but also capable of doing what you would want him to do.
Just to put in perspective how much time Vando missed over the last couple seasons and how much I think that ultimately affected him. In 2021, he played 64 games. And remember, that was a 72 game season because the league was coming back from the pandemic. 2022, he played 74 games. 2023, 78 games. The next two seasons combined, 65 games. And often Vando came back, didn't quite look right, ended up going back on the shelf, being out for a while, then being brought back. It disrupts his rhythm. I'm sure it disrupts a lot of his confidence. Just not having his body at full strength. You mentioned, and we can get into more of this over the course of this week and over the course of the preseason, for the talk about the improved jump shot, at least in practice, and the corner threes and yada, yada. I would love to see it. I will bang this drum forever. What matters is actually Vando as a finisher. Like, his ability around the rim is way, way more important than his ability to hit an open corner three. Just far more.
Yeah. I mean, he's the difference between Vanderbilt. Let's assume he can play defensively. Like, he really is the player that Lakers want him to be, and becomes a plus defender, especially relative to what else they have available to them, which is obviously, like, doesn't matter if Jarred Vanderbilt or Marcus Smart are perfect defenders, or if they're deployed in the most perfect way for them. If they are still, you have to do it based on what you have. The difference between Vanderbilt being an effective player, particularly in the playoffs, one you can really actually use in your rotation, versus played off the floor, is going from a negative offensive player to a neutral one.
Yeah.
And he was just bad. He was bad as a three-point shooter. He was bad in the mid-range, and he was terrible around the rim. Like, that's got to be, sort of league average. He's got to be at least competent at one of those things.
Yes.
Preferably the one that seems the most obvious is finishing, but we'll see. I mean, but you're right. I mean, everybody pays so much attention to the corner three. I mean, his percentages as a rim finisher are just awful. And
in the last couple seasons, they've really been abysmal.
Right. And hopefully that's health related. Hopefully those two things.
I think it's very possible it is. think
but
it's
we'll
very
find out.
possible.
And and so that will be the thing that makes him truly an effective and useful player for the team this year, particularly as it goes on. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 36,000 subscribers to the channel. Of course, Lakers playing Friday night, preseason opener. We'll get you ready for that. We'll see everyone tomorrow.